Welcome to my channel where we question everything. Today the topic is the death of Mahsa Amini, and is this a Persian color revolution? Now, if you haven't heard, there are some unrest in Iran, and it all started with the death of Mahsa Amini. And there are various articles in BBC and Sky News and so on, so most of the sources come actually from, but there are some Middle Eastern sources as well. So Mahsa Amini was an ethnic Kurd who was from the western city of Saqqez in Kurdistan province. And she died in the hospital on the Friday of the 16th after spending 3 days in a coma. Now, on September the 13th, Mahsa and her brother were on their way to visit some families in Tehran. And as they stopped or exit the train station, that's the way, they were stopped by the morality police. And the morality police are actually some other section branch of the police that look at the dress of female and look at the morality issues of their citizen. And they accused Mahsa of not using the hijab correctly, and that she has to cover her hair, and that she didn't wear the proper clothes, which was supposed that the arms and legs should be covered by loose clothing. And then they took her, or they accompanied her to a police or a retraining center, or a training center, whatever they call it, where she should have given some training on how to dress properly and how to wear the hijab correctly. And then what happened, basically, she died for some other reason. And while she died, she collapsed and then went into a coma and then went to hospital, and then she died 3 days later. Now, yes, she was, it sounds funny, she was supposed to be in custody by the police, and then she died. And that sounds suspicious. And naturally, some people will get upset, and they did get upset. And they started to protest action, and this whole protest action quickly escalated and became worse. Now, what facts do we really know? Well, according to the BBC, there were some witnesses that while she was in the police van, the police actually assaulted her. But when you look at some of the photographs, you cannot see any marks, bruises that she wore. So I would presume that she either got a little bit stubborn, and maybe they slapped her through the face, which is nothing out of the ordinary. And then she was taken to the police station. And then the police station actually provided some CC footage, and which they claimed she was, but I mean, they can't really claim false, because the woman should be able, the family should be able to identify her. In any case, Mahsa came into the police station where a lot of other people were sitting. She sat down, video cuts, the video again shows her where she's still sitting and looking around, then she stands up. And she goes and talks to another woman, and the woman sort of fiddles with her garment, some looks like a scarf, or I don't know, belt or something like that. And then they talked, and the woman turned around, and then suddenly Mahsa grabbed her head and pointed onto the floor. And then the CCTV camera stopped again. No. Sorry, then you saw actually some medical guy coming in to attend to her. You can see actually the case. And then the video is cut, and then they show how they carry her out on a stretcher, probably at the rear, or I'm not totally sure, but through a hallway, small hallway, or small panel in any case. and then out by the door, and then you see another piece where she's loaded into the ambulance. And now the police is being accused that they tried to hide her and that they took her at the back and then they hit her and so on, but there's no evidence to that. You can see she's sitting there on a chair, she's waiting, she's standing up, talking to this woman. She completed the conversation and she falls down and collapses, and there's a medical guy right there after attending to her. So I don't see where the police ever assaulted her. And then later on, they told that the brother and the family actually went to her and saw her in the hospital. Now, if you see her in the hospital, they would have noticed bruises, which they couldn't find, because then they would have said it. And they haven't seen any bruises. Then there's a photograph circulating of Mahsa lying in this hospital bed with a pipe to her mouth, and you can see she's unconscious. And you see no bruises. You can see her whole shoulder and the face. There's no bruises like that. So, in my opinion, there is no evidence that supports that the police mistreated her significantly enough that she would have gotten a heart attack and would have died. Now, the medical director of medical or forensic there, said there in his report, and he also stated that there were no skull fractures, no wounds to the head, no blood. There was no blood coming out of her eyes or nose and so on. You would have seen the bruises, but you don't see anything like that. And she died of a heart attack. And she had a history of this medical condition, apparently, according to medical records. The father says she was always healthy and she never got sick. But, hey, we know of people that had heart defects, which are not easily diagnosed. There's usually a valve that doesn't operate nicely, or there's some other stuff. Hey, could have even been a COVID injection, mitochondria, or whatever. So, but there's a reason she had an artifact, and it could be a totally natural effect. But in any case, riots progressed. Until today, the riots are still proceeding. And the protest initially started in the home city of Sakwes, or how do you in any case pronounce it, and then it went to some other regions. And then apparently now it's in all the cities or major cities. Yes. But in any case, so then the protest continued to cause chaos under the pretense of solidarity with Armenia, but it soon changed into a slogan of death to the dictator, and totally changed the narrative to such an extent that the father of Mahsa actually stated that the gatherings and demonstrations held in a number of Iranian provinces have nothing to do with the family, and they are not for their sake. He actually says that he and Mahsa's family are disgruntled by them. So he doesn't support that. He just wants to know what the truth is and what really happened. And I can understand that. I mean, well, any father or mother would like to know why their child died. And I would have also liked it. But in any case, then according to an article in RT, the Russian television, this event is not out of the ordinary. It's a typical story of Iran, where it's not only the morality police who resort to violence, but it's also by ordinary older women. And there are plenty of videos on the internet in which some of the young women are actually slapped by the older woman for improperly wearing the headscarf. And in this case, they stated it was just one of them that was particularly unlucky. Well, she had other problems, and who would know beforehand. But imagine, it's not only the police, it's the other woman as well. In any case, like I said, the narrative or the claims of the riots start to change. And it's they start to call death to the dictator, which they refer to Ali Khamenei. And then some of the crowd shouted, "Woman, life, freedom," and they were throwing down their hijabs into the fire and to dustbins and cutting off their hairs and so forth. But then it became a little bit more violent. And when it becomes too violent, then unfortunately you have to be very suspicious. So according to the Iranian, the IRNA news agency, Iranian news, the rioters have attacked government buildings and damaged public property. And they were charging that these guys were steered by a foreign and revolutionary agent. And well, it's again, you want to have to take the numbers a little bit in suspicion, because the one guy says so much, the one guy says so much, and so on. But by Sky News, according to Sky News on the 21st of September, there were about 22 people killed, and one assistant police officer was killed, and then 4 police officers were injured that needed treatment. Now, I'm sorry. When a police officer dies due to riots, then you have to become very, very, very vicious. In any case, naturally, our policy chief of the foreign policy chief of the EU, Joseph Borrell, slammed Iran for its widespread and disproportionate use of force against non-violent protesters. And I cannot see how it can be non-violent when you start killing a policeman. So as you can see, it sounds more like similar to Libya, Syria, Egypt. And we all know that there were foreign instigators in it. And we also know who the culprit is of these. It is well known that the Americans and the Israelis are at not the real open conflict with Iran, but that they don't like Iran and their leadership, and for some of the reasons they hate Iran. I still have to figure out why. Maybe when they confiscated the petroleum companies in the 50s, or when they disposed of the Shah, the puppet of America, or I don't know, or when they want the embassy and tried to rescue, and then they shot down the American troops, helicopters, or whatever. I don't know. But in any case, American Israel hate. And we also know that Israel had done some targeted assassination of scientists and so forth in Iran. So if I had to point a finger, I would point a finger at them. And we also know that America financed NGOs for revolutions and color revolutions. And hey, biggest example is Ukraine, 2014. Well, then we can talk about Syria and Libya. But let's take Ukraine. That's the most prominent one. So are there people behind this? Yes. Why? Because the narrative has changed. We in South Africa we have a very unruly, uneducated population. And some of our people also die, or they are taken into custody in the police station and then they die. And then there's a riot on the outside, but it's usually a riot where, say a couple of people, or 200 or 300 people, and they throw a little bit of stone, and then they disperse and Bob Jungle. They don't kill the policeman. You can expect it in South Africa. That's what you're going to, but you don't see it. But you saw it in the Middle East, and you saw it in the Maidan Square in Ukraine. I mean, in that instance, I think more than 30 or 40 policemen were killed in the Maidan riots. Shots were fired, guns were fired. No. In any case, and then the Western world is, typical again, going on about Iran and custody. But hey, have they forgotten, America forgotten about George Floyd? And don't tell me there are no people dying in custody in American jails or police stations. Come on. Well, let's look at the Yellow Vest protests in France and the people that were injured there. There were 11 people killed. 5 people lost their hands. 23 people lost their eyesight. About 265 people suffered head injuries, and about another 200 had various hand, body, back, and leg injuries. And of those injured, 480 were protesters, 95 were journalists, 40 were high school students, and 30 were volunteer health workers. So that should say something to you. Well, I'm not an anthropologist, so I'm not totally familiar with Iranian culture. But what I do realize is that one has to evaluate people based on their culture. And I've discussed in previous videos that you have to see how the culture works, and you will find that each culture has their own rules and methods of doing things, which would develop over centuries, and they do work for that specific culture. But it doesn't mean that that same issue will work for another culture. Now, what I would like to talk about is, why are the Iranians so strict about women's dress? And we can go back and understand that they are actually a Muslim country, and their culture is mostly based on Muslim guidelines. It's the same as in Saudi Arabia, Oman, UAE, and all the other countries of the Middle East. Their relationship to their women's rights are a lot different than in the Western cultures, which is mostly based on Christianity. And one has to look at, why are they so strict with women? And, well, I can go back to the Bible, Adam and Eve. You know, it was Eve that enticed Adam to violate the guidelines of God and to eat the forbidden apple. And that's how Adam fell from grace. Now, there were many many wars that fought about women. There are still regular fist fights about women. And if you go back to nature, well, every mating season, male animals fight over the right to be with a female. It's a common natural thing. So why are then these females very so restricted? Well, I can only offer an opinion. And if I was a religious leader and so on, I had to instruct the people under me how to behave and how to prevent conflict and violence, then I would insist that women cover themselves up by original the burqa, which cover the whole woman up, which is still being worn today. And then we have the relaxed versions of hijab, just a little bit like a headdress. We can even look at going back a couple of decades back into Western culture, and you will find that with women, when they go bathing, they had to wear a head cap, and they had to have a full body bath suit, and they had to cover their bodies and so on. And only today that we have bikinis and more sexually provocative clothing. And that is actually the key word. sexually provocative. Because women in the modern Western world wear clothes and do makeup and do their hair for one reason and one reason only: to look beautiful for other men in order to be either praised or to obtain the attention of a man. It's, forget about this, I want to feel good. No, it's not that. You feel good when somebody else looks at you in a admiring way. And that is why you have so many divorces in the Western world. You have adultery. You have sexually promiscuous behavior. You have a lot of teen pregnancies. You have venereal diseases. You have LGBT, gender identity, and basically the destruction of the concept of family, because you have feminism, which promotes the female rights, and that and a constant propaganda of methods of suppressing the manliness of people, which is all part of the Western culture. But one has to ask yourself, these Muslims don't want that. They don't want that to enter their society, because it will be destructive for their culture, and therefore the soul culture, and therefore their society will collapse. Because those rules cannot be applied in their culture without major turbulence. Even why is Putin constantly talking about the family issues and the Russian culture? He doesn't want the English word, decadence, the destruction that is happening in the West. He doesn't want that, because it will mean the destruction of the Russian culture. And that is why, in my opinion, the whole effort of the Americans in Afghanistan effort to bring democracy and the rights of the woman has failed, and nothing much has changed. Yes, the world is trying to force the Taliban to lift some of the restrictions on females, of behavior or restrictions, and they will probably do it, but the basic culture still has to be protected, and the Taliban will make sure about that. The point here is, you cannot put one culture's value or insist that another culture should accept it, because each culture has developed over hundreds of years and developed their own rules in order to create a stable environment for people to live in. So, in any case, to come to the end of today's discussion, about 14 hours ago, there was a Reuters report, and the Reuters report basically stated that until today, 102 people have died, and 960 people have non-threatening injuries. Now ask yourself, are you prepared to die for the principle of wearing a hijab, a headscarf, or not? And I'm sure that everybody will answer no. So there must be something very sinister behind the whole matter. And we all know who the culprits are. Hopefully it doesn't escalate and the Iranian government gets it under control without injuring more people. Because in my opinion, it's totally unnecessary. And people are dying for the benefit of other people, the culprit. In any case, that is the story for today. If you like what you heard, press the like button. If you didn't, dislike button. If you want to hear more, then subscribe to the channel. Until next time, cheers.